Hey, what up, YouTube? We're going to jump into our African news today. It's the 17th of December. Just so you know, 2022. I'm Abandoned Nihilism, and this is the News Underground. We're going to be covering some African news because I really don't think African news is covered too much by us, pale-faced 30-something gamer political idiots on Twitch. So that's why I would like to jump into this a little bit. First bit of news that this video went a bit viral. I saw this on Twitter, and someone put this in the Discord as well. But racism, by the white population, by the rich white population in Africa. This is not every white person in Africa, of course. I could use some. He's not wrong. Fuck you, Equaldari. But racism is still alive and well, and this, I'll just give you a little taste of it. I don't know if I'm going to give this woman the full 3 minutes, but long story short is, eventually somewhere in here, she blames her racism on her diabetes, whatever that means. But I just thought I'd give you a taste that, the attitudes that created the apartheid still exist in Africa.
Still, I agree with you wholeheartedly. What I say is ban the black man. They rape, they steal, they kill worse than any pit bull could, and they get away with it. Ban those that are making the laws. Ban Ekurhuleni. Ban the black man. Get all the black women and cut out their uteruses and their ovaries that they cannot procreate, because they will all turn out the same, because they are all the same. I'm very passionate about this. Ban them, kill them, shoot them, get rid of them, because they are the problem, not pit bulls, not animals. Animals are beautiful, and they deserve.
Okay, you get the idea. We're not gonna entertain the full 3 minutes. If you do want to hear the whole statement, you can see it here. I just wanted to point out that, hey, it doesn't really seem like Africa has made a lot of progress, and there's a lot of blame to go around. It is very true that when you look throughout history, Africa has been exploited by first world countries, and it would be interesting to see what Africa would be if it wasn't if these massive powers weren't intervening and I sorry for the word, but raping Africa, quite frankly, these empires. With that said, I also think one thing that is never discussed is the blatant and overwhelming corruption of your average African government. There does not seem to be much progress when it comes to democracy, civil government. There seems to be an encouragement to keep these people as undereducated as possible. I don't have all the solutions to this, but I do think one thing that is not talked about enough is the just overwhelming corruption that we see from local and national governments in Africa in general. I think 2 or 3 streams ago, we showed some video from Africa. We did an African section, and it was just assumed that the local government wasn't going to build a bridge, or wasn't going to build. There was like some dam or some bridge that needed to be built, and it was so wildly beyond, just you couldn't even fathom the local government coming in and helping these people who were like, who needed irrigation. They needed, they're literally living in straw huts in the middle of the desert. They need everything that they can get, and local government squirreling away money, failing. This has nothing to do with race, by the way, as well, because there will be these psychopaths that like to say, this is race. Either this is white people in Africa doing this to black people, or this is, this has to do with being black. Just want to address that, get that elephant out of the room. This has nothing to do with race. This is a human phenomenon. human beings are capable of great mercy. We're also capable of great cruelty, right? Especially, if everyone else is living bad, but I can live a little bit better, but I have to be a shithead to do it. I have to be an asshole to do it. A lot of human beings are perfectly okay with that. The other video here from Africa is I don't think we're going to watch the whole thing. It's 26-minute long video, but it is a devastating video about what COVID is doing to Africa, but not just Africa, but wider geographic regions as well. This is a very good package here from DW, German news network. I just wanted to show this here because this is what happens when we ignore these countries, when we're only interacting with these countries when it's benefiting us. And look, it's blatant, right? And look at what we can do for Ukraine. You know what I mean? We could snap our fingers and change the entire tide of a land war. We have mighty resources. The United States is very picky and choosy and will actually weaponize aid agencies, to help certain places and not help certain other places. And the United States empire is playing a grand game of chess, and it has no problem throwing human lives into the wood chipper. Their actions prove it. The criticisms are real, right? Just because a lot of these lefties are losing their mind defending Russia for, I don't know why, compromat maybe, but they're not wrong. A lot of these lefties are also not wrong about the U.S. empire. There is a rap sheet, you go to Pluto and back, okay? The crimes of the United States against humanity. Let's not forget that, okay? In our defense of the Ukrainian democracy, let's not forget that.
Cape Town. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, many countries imposed tough restrictions to protect their populations from the potentially deadly disease, at times with little regard to the collateral economic and social fallout. In this week's show, we're talking about COVID-19 and human rights. Welcome to our COVID-19 special. In South Africa, unemployment has soared. Jobless and destitute people are everywhere on the streets of Johannesburg. Crime is rampant. Does science offer new prospects for the African country? In Cape Town, scientists succeeded in developing their own mRNA vaccine in just 1 year. But first to China. Since November, protests have broken out against strict lockdowns. DW reporter Han Shuang-Li explains why.
Down with the Communist Party. Xi Jinping stepped down. This video, which reportedly shows protesters in Shanghai, has been watched over 2 million times online. It's been decades since so many people in China risked repercussions by publicly voicing their anger on the streets and on social media.
I never thought that there would be a day where we could raise our voices like this. You're all so brave. Please protect yourselves. For 3 years, people have suppressed their emotions. Now they've reached their limit.
Protesters mourn the victims of a fire that broke out in Urumqi. They're also demanding a relaxation of COVID restrictions. Many locals suspect that the lockdown measures are the reason the 10 victims couldn't escape.
These are all things that people know from their everyday lives. When there are positive cases in a residential building, barricades are erected, and the building's doors are blocked or locked. But even apart from that, people have come to feel that these policies have gotten out of hand, that they've become irrational, that it's no longer about protecting lives, and to some extent achieves exactly the opposite.
Was it ever about protecting lives?
Beijing has been scrambling to contain major outbreaks since the Omicron variant emerged, which led to a seemingly never-ending cycle of lockdowns and mass testing. Public dissent has continued to grow. Despite censorship efforts, some videos are still circulating online, like this one about harsh lockdowns in Shanghai in April. Personal tragedies were shared online, including stories about children being separated from their parents in quarantine. Or this one from a father who says that delays in treatment caused by COVID restrictions led to his child's death.
Oh my God.
Aside from the other problems, the lockdowns are of course a massive burden on the economy. China had originally forecast 5.5% GDP growth for this year, but it's not likely to meet that. And these statistics aren't just numbers. There are people behind these statistics. People who run restaurants or work in tourism. And they're all in a terrible economic situation.
What a crazy setup. What is that about?
Zero COVID is President Xi Jinping's signature policy that he has championed personally. After he secured his historic third term, China did loosen some measures in early November. But Beijing insisted it was not a return to business as usual. China can't afford to drop all measures. That's because Beijing decided to stick with its own less effective COVID vaccines. And vaccination rates in the most vulnerable group are relatively low. Only around 2/3 of people over 60 have had 3 shots.
How? How? I mean, they're literally kicking down your door and fucking holding you down and injecting you. How do you still have people that don't have all the doses? How is that even in a full-on authoritarian setup? There's still people who don't have all the doses. I mean, if that doesn't tell you right there, you know, that we'll just never have, there'll never be the population will just never be fully COVID safe. You know, never. Full-on authoritarian control of their entire populace, and you still have people that don't have every dose. What the fuck can you do at that point?
We estimate that there are about 190 million older people in China with chronic diseases like diabetes or high blood pressure. Those are additional risk factors. China will have to address this problem if they want to avoid an exit wave that would result in extremely high death tolls.
Beijing has now announced a vaccination drive for the elderly, a move that could be the first step towards lifting pandemic controls. China has eased some COVID restrictions following the recent wave of protests. But this isn't a sign that the authorities are completely backing down. On the contrary, Beijing has vowed to crack down on what it calls hostile forces, a warning that dissident voices could pay a high price.
China is not an...
I want that transition, dude. How do I steal this transition, dude? This is so cool. I want this. I want that, dude. How cool would it be every time I did that? It was like COVID flying across the screen, man. I want that. Someone
China
steal it
is
for
not
me.
an isolated...
Hey, if I was PewDiePie, you'd steal it for me. 10 minutes later, I'd have that bitch in my Discord fully cut out, photoshopped, and green screen ready for me to use. Oh, please love me, PewDiePie. Yeah. What am I doing? What am I doing? I'm literally shitting on the 2 people watching my stream. Oh, a nasty needle. Ooh, well, thank you so much for making yourself vulnerable to a disease that is going to get more and more deadly. I really appreciate the right wing killing themselves off. I think it's a great move. I think you should keep doing it. Hopefully you don't have any vaccines, right? So that when you catch Omicron, it hits you like a fucking ton of bricks, right? They get you on the respirator right away, and then it's beep, beep, whoops. Where's my oh, come on. Oh, there it is. You know, and then it's like, you know, he was a good man. He worked at the gas station, and he was never late. We lost a good one. We lost a good one. He had pure blood, but his mind was dirty. So thank you.
Case. According to a UN report, COVID-19 restriction measures have violated human rights around the world. Uganda also imposed strict lockdowns. DW reporter Julius Mugambwa spoke with victims of police violence there.
Twaha Kabega shows us the scars on his body. He's accused the Kampala police of assault. During the pandemic, security officers enforced lockdowns and restrictions on movement by any means necessary.
I don't really have time for people like the loony, so bye-bye.
I was stopped by 3 police officers riding on motorcycles. They violently dragged me off my motorcycle and started beating me up. I was wounded by a bayonet. I still have a scar. My fingers were beaten, and you can still see what they did to me.
My God.
For journalists, reporting on such human rights abuses was also difficult and even dangerous. David Kaliankolo filmed security officers enforcing the nightly curfew in his neighborhood. He says the police later came to his home and assaulted him outside on his veranda, beating him until he lost consciousness.
Jesus.
I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my head before I lost consciousness. I regained it 2 days later at the hospital. Doctors told me that I almost died.
According to the Uganda Human Rights Commission, such abuses rose sharply during the pandemic. Security agencies, including the local defense units or LDU, often acted arbitrarily and without oversight. The Ugandan army says these violations were punished.
The big issue is, if any LDU violated rights of the population, what was done? You saw our courts sat, and they were taken to military courts, and they were charged and sentenced. And some of them up to now are still serving their sentences.
But many victims, including Twaha Kabega, were reluctant to report cases involving the security forces.
I didn't bother to report the case to the police. I just told my parents about it and got treatment for the injuries. As you may know, sometimes people report an incident, but no action is taken.
In his book Quarantined, Ugandan academic and cartoonist Jimmy Spire Sentongo recounts his own ordeal in a Ugandan isolation center at the outset of the pandemic. He insists that the Ugandan state needs to be held accountable for violations of basic rights, even during times of crisis. The cartoons, which depicted injustices and human rights violations during the pandemic, are a powerful indictment of these abuses of power.
If we do not document such experiences, then we don't have reference points maybe in future when we want to make reflection of how to handle them better. It's like everything easily gets forgotten because that was a period as though of darkness where people could freely do whatever they felt they could do when everyone was in panic.
Yeah.
In late September, Uganda declared a new outbreak of Ebola caused by the Sudan strain of the virus, for which no vaccine is available. Once again, lockdowns and quarantines are being imposed to contain a virus. The Ugandan military says it's now working more closely with human rights groups to put basic rights at the forefront of managing the health emergency.
Later on, the president ordered their retraining. They were trained. To date, we have a much, much finer local defense unit. We have a thinking that if any other challenge comes in, like we are seeing Ebola coming in, all of these agencies will come on board and we are able to work together more harmoniously than before.
On December 2nd, the last known Ebola patient left the hospital, but the lockdown in the 2 high-risk districts was extended another 21 days, the incubation period of the Ebola virus.
What the transition?
Pandemic restrictions were also imposed in South Africa for a long time to prevent the further spread of the COVID-19 virus. The subsequent economic downturn has exacerbated social inequalities there. Many South Africans have lost their jobs and are now doing everything they can to make ends meet.
Electrician Stephen Moyo gets up at 5 every morning and pounds the pavement of Johannesburg in search of work.
Wow.
Even if he finds it, he earns 30 euros at most. But those good days are now few and far between. The economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic continues to be felt here, especially in disadvantaged communities.
The situation is worse. Nobody's coming to hire us. And I'm even worried, how can I get money for food and the money to pay the rent since there's no employment, since COVID have gone in South Africa.
The economic decline is catastrophic in the wake of what were some of the strictest lockdowns in the world. An estimated 10 million people are out of work. Many have been left with nothing but the generosity of strangers to rely on.
There's no work and I've given up looking. Now I try to make money by dancing and begging. COVID made things even worse.
Crime,
Literally
too,
standing in
is
the
on the
street.
rise. Rampant infrastructure theft is putting even more strain on an economy that's expected to grow by just 2.1% in 2022.
People literally ripping
In Gauteng
copper
province,
and wire
South
out of
Africa's
the
economic
infrastructure.
heartland,
Look at that.
railway services have nearly come to a standstill.
Wow, look at that. Literally stealing the fucking railroad tracks.
And vandals are removing tracks and stripping railway stations bare.
That's extreme desperation, folks.
In Johannesburg, local authorities are struggling to cope with the rise in cable theft, which has been leaving residents and businesses in the dark.
Wow, yeah. Copper cable, though, yeah. Fiber optics.
Because of the number of people who are unemployed and sitting at home with nothing to do, theft and vandalism are increasing. We're trying very hard to keep up, and people are often left without power for hours on end.
Wow.
Teams like this one are working day in and day out, repairing outages caused by cable theft.
Yeah, Equaldari, even the nails.
Analysts are concerned that the current economic slump could be hard to turn around, and that the COVID pandemic may have tipped the country into a downward spiral.
It's not very deep. That's not very,
Since April
take you a
2020,
couple,
when the lockdowns
about
began
an hour
and
to dig
COVID
that
really
up.
hit hard with one of the highest mortality rates, we saw the amplification, the acceleration of our contradictions, unemployment soaring 10% to about 45%. You can compare that to early 30s Germany, which was part of the problems that created Nazism, and then austerity. And I fear that the right-wing tendencies, when you have these explosions, rioting and looting and xenophobic attacks, these will get even worse in the coming years.
Large-scale civil unrest already swept through parts of South Africa in 2021. Poverty is also at least in part to blame for the rise in aggression and violence against the estimated 2.9 million immigrants who live in the country. Local vigilante groups have been carrying out checks on shops owned by foreigners.
Yeah, expiry is 2024.
Though they have no legal authority, they've been making unofficial visits to foreign-owned businesses to check for expired goods and for owners' immigration status.
You are here, but you're not allowed to be here. Isn't it?
So that's the solution, right? Don't make him don't make this hardworking person, this once again, it's not race, it's not region, it's just ignorance. It's a worldwide battle, okay, against stupidity. And we need to be shameless in shaming it. Okay? You have the wrong idea, you don't know what you're doing, and I feel utterly confident telling you that. Don't be shy about it. You are wrong. The solution is to make these people legal citizens. He's already working hard, right? He's already contributing. You make him a legal citizen. You make him a functioning member of society. You give him access to all the legal markets so that he can fill his stores with stuff that isn't going to expire. The only reason they're doing that So, you see, look, this one's expired by a day. Oh, shut the business down. Oh, now we're justified. I don't think he has any governmental ability to do that. This is just straight up harassment, right? Oh, you see, and then they'll blast him on Google reviews or Yelp or something. Oh, he sells expired goods. See, I mean, it is if they legitimately are selling spoiled food, I mean, that is an issue, right? But I have a feeling that these guys don't find a lot of that.
So now that is going to be a problem. So who's got your papers?
South Africa is teetering on the...
You guys want to see what not giving a fuck it looks like?
So who's got your papers?
That right there. Oh, we missed it.
Isn't it? So now that is going to be a problem. So who's got your papers?
So literally asking for his fucking papers. Literally asking for his fucking papers. He's just silent. Doesn't say a fucking thing. I think maybe does this guy work here as well? He's like, what do we do about this? What do we do about this? This is what fuck off and go to hell looks like.
South Africa is teetering on the edge of a social and economic precipice, and the pandemic is only partly to blame.
Oh, it's blue now.
South Africa kept extending its lockdown period because there were too few vaccines available in the country. To enable low and middle income countries to produce their own vaccines in the future, the World Health Organization is promoting the transfer of knowledge with an mRNA hub in Cape Town.
No, the obvious solution is to ban all vaccines. Obvious. Everything bad.
How is an mRNA vaccine produced? South African scientists explain the role DNA plays in the process to visitors from an Indian pharmaceutical company.
But how do you mix them? That you are proud of. Come up with some solution.
That's the exciting part, the changing of perceptions and the building of capacity. South Africa contributes to the knowledge base that exists and training the rest of the world and not just a receiver. This program will allow companies to have the capacity.
What was the point of that? What was the point of that? Did we need to look inside this man's soul? Was that necessary? This is a scientist.
A receiver. This program will allow companies to have the capacity to actually start to produce various vaccines. That means if there's an outbreak next time of a...
It's so quick. Is this a horror movie?
Of a different virus or bacterial, but it's a pandemic nevertheless, the companies will have the capacity to actually respond quickly to that pandemic because they will have in-house capacity to produce vaccines.
They did it 3 times in very quick succession. What a bizarre editing choice. If there was some horror stings, it would have been freaky.
Training takes place at the mRNA vaccine hub in Cape Town, run by the company Afrigen. In just 1 year, scientists here developed a candidate mRNA COVID vaccine based on publicly available data on the Moderna vaccine. The World Health Organization is supporting the hub to transfer this expertise to other low and middle income countries.
Man, as an IT guy, oh man, I've worked in some hospitals getting to toy around with some of this stuff. It's so much fun. You see how they're daisy chained together here? They got power right here, but it looks like they're all probably plugged into like a central box right here. Oh, maybe at the bottom. I don't know. Oh yeah, all these wires are coming out the bottom. That's so cool.
Before COVID and the post-COVID, things has changed. People are helping each other. They want to help each other to make the society in the better way. That's why we are here. The Afrigen they have the technology, we have the facility, we have infrastructure. We can make together.
Where's his extreme close-ups?
Biological E is a leading vaccine manufacturer in India. It also plans to go into mRNA vaccine production. Scientist Arvind Kumar Jain researched mRNA technology at Oxford University until 2018. Then he gave that up, believing it would be at least 30 years before the technology would be ready. But the pandemic changed all that. Now he's responsible for developing an mRNA platform for his Indian employer.
once you have the technology in your hand, you know how to handle mRNA. It's very easy to switch from one vaccine to another vaccine. So obviously the first vaccine is going to be costly for you as of learning, as of manufacturing and setting up everything. But once you have it, you have it. You can make a vaccine of almost anything you want.
Sick.
Researchers have already started using mRNA technology to produce TB, Ebola, and cancer vaccines.
This network has the potential to build, to divert.
You see these tyrannical fascists, they want to create more vaccines so that they can put it into your body and infect you with their medical science. I guarantee you, more than 90%, probably more than 95% of the people that are all anti-vax now have vaccines flowing through their veins.
Diversify the global vaccine manufacturing landscape. And I think that is the beauty of it. You cannot have pandemic preparedness if you have centralized vaccine manufacturing. We've all said never again. Never again can you find a continent not having access to vaccines because it doesn't have the ability to produce its own vaccine. So we're going to keep the momentum.
Some civil society organizations fear there could be conflicts with Big Pharma. For example, over patent infringement.
Yeah, no, actually, Jenny McCarthy was right, Zio Duke. There's no more. All right, you guys get it. Vaccines, yada, yada, yada. I'm putting you to sleep here. Very sorry. If you want to see the rest of this, please check it out. We got it. I just need to move on. Sorry. I know. Africa doesn't deserve this, but I have limited time. Well, that was my African news. Thank you so much, YouTube. I know. I'm sorry. Thank you so much, YouTube. Thank you. Like and subscribe. Check out the Twitch. Okay, sorry.